Welcome, everybody. My name is Fanuel Muindi, and this is our November Public Engagement with Science Hub monthly gathering where we bring together scholars, practitioners in the New England area to talk to them, to learn about what they're doing, what they're learning from their work. So I'm one of the co-leads of this hub, and that's our mission, is to connect and bring people together because it's more fun doing this together, right? And you get much further when you work together. So I'm so excited to be joined today by Mariette DiChristina. Mariette, welcome to this virtual environment here. She's the Dean of the College of Communication at Boston University, just next door, and Professor of the Practice in Journalism. Previously, she served as Executive Vice President of magazines at Springer Nature and spent a decade as editor-in-chief of Scientific American. Man, we could spend all day just on that, Mariette, but just hold on that. She also sits on the board of the Society for Science and advises the National Academies of Sciences Standing Committee on Advancing Science Communication, which, by the way, is now looking for new members. I just got an email about that. And she's also on the Climate Crossroads initiative. I also have the pleasure of serving with her on the advisory board of the Civic Science Fellows Program at the Rita Allen Foundation. And Mariette, I've just learned that you were just appointed to the board
Oh,
of
yeah.
Rita Allen Foundation. So, I mean, you are just all over the place.
What
Mariette,
am I doing?
welcome to PESH.
It's great to see you all. Thank you so much. And I'm hoping to learn from you a little later when we have a chance to chat. So thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And so I have a couple of questions, and then I'm going to shut up and just let people jump in and ask you questions. As Dean Mariette, you get to have multiple points of view. You know, the 30,000 view. Most importantly, you probably get to see that, but and also the nitty gritty as well. I think most likely today we'll get the 30,000 view on different at BU and also with your work at the National Academies, which I think I would love to pick your brain on. But first, I wanted to actually pose a question that you asked a panelist at a recent session. You were in Berlin at the 2024 Falling Walls Science Summit, and you were talking about civic science, career roadmap, and so forth. And you asked this question about the meaning of civic science. And I felt that a really nice place to start to get your take about how do you see what is civic science from your point of view in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Really appreciate it. When I first heard what civic science is and started to think about it, I thought, at last, this is the missing piece. I'm a person who, in the words of Michio Kaku, believes science is an engine of human prosperity, but it's really hard to make that prosperity come true or come to light if we don't connect with the people that the science is meant to serve, and not just connect with them, in the sense of telling them stuff, which is great and nice, and that's certainly a piece of it, but genuinely bi-directionally engaging with them. And Fanuel, you mentioned Peter Levine over at Tufts. He's one of the people who really is a North Star for me around that bi-directional civic engagement. And that means being open to feedback. That means getting help, deciding things that are of such import that science alone is not the only way to address them. Society needs to weigh in. How do we properly use, let's say, gene drives or other remarkable new technologies? And when I was as a science journalist, we would say the science is kind of neutral. It's how we apply it that makes all the difference, how society chooses to do that. And so what I'm hoping is that civic science invites people in to the conversation so that all of us end up shaping and benefiting from science together.
So you bring up this bidirectionality that comes up, and I think Frances Cologne, when you asked her this question, she was talking about democratizing the tools of science, right? But I want to push you a little bit on this because I get this question a lot about its meaning, in particular with reference to science communication, science policy, right? You have all these other sort of other terms that are thrown about. How do you think of civic science with respect to these other fields that are sort of established, right? And people know them very well, especially, for example, science communication.
Mhm.
Because at times I'm finding that could be a hurdle. Actually, terminology itself is a hurdle in making progress. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that so science communication, let me liken it first to my own career as a science journalist for more than 30 years before coming here to Boston University. Once upon a time, I would write my story and send it out there, and then maybe somebody, if they were good and steamed, would write me a letter or pick up the phone, and that was pretty much it. I sort of shared information, and occasionally I got a little feedback back. And I think science communication, which is wonderful and an important piece of civic science, can do much more than that. We have the tools now, whether they're digital tools, whether they're platforms that are in-person gatherings of community members and so on. And so this is not a denigration at all of existing things like science communication, which I know and adore and have spent my most of my life now focused on. But that there was something missing, which was genuinely the people, and not just talking to them or sharing things with them, but listening to them back, taking in their feedback and incorporating it. And this is where I think it can be a tiny bit uncomfortable potentially for research community members. Sometimes maybe taking their direction on some areas or questions that could be asked. And I don't know. I think that those would be interesting conversations to have.
Yeah. Now take us back to 2019. So you joined BU as dean at that time. Tell us about the landscape, especially with reference to civic science communication, and yeah, give us that take.
So even in 2019, so civic science was sort of less spoken of, but it was not invented, just recently. In fact, I'm trying to remember right now. I'm blanking on it because the jet lag is real, folks. Um, but there was somebody who wrote about this a lot. I'm going to have to follow up with Fanuel to tell you the name of the person who talked about this idea of civic scientists who would be engaged with the communities, policy leaders, business leaders, and others to build a bridge. And in 2019, we were starting to talk a little bit more about building those bridges. And as a dean, as a brand new dean, I thought that this is awfully exciting. I don't think it was too much later, actually, that I heard about the efforts of the Rita Allen Foundation and the committee that Fanuel and I are now on, the Practice and Science of Civic Science Advisory Committee, which I'm so proud of. I was managed to say while I was so jet lagged with all of you today. And since then, I've just seen this I'm going to call it a movement. I don't think that's unfair to pick up a lot of energy and enthusiasm. And I think we're wrestling with some of the challenges of that right now. So first, it's an amazing idea, right? But then how do you start to make it real, not just real for the fellows? And we're now in our third cohort of civic science fellows, which each of them has been a year and a half. And one of the first one I think was right through the pandemic, which had its own challenges. And then how do you take those fellowships and then make them into career paths, make them into, put them in places where their great work can do the most good.
Yeah. So, but going back to the BU,
Mm.
you had science communication, right? The Scicommers
Yeah,
network was active. Yeah, courses. To just anchor this question in thinking about the graduate certificate for civic science
yeah. Thank
communication,
you.
right? It didn't exist then, right? So,
That is true.
what was it about the landscape that told you
Uh,
we want to create this thing?
Yeah, thank you for Fanuel for saying that. So I'm trying not to be overly promotional, but yeah, so I saw the kind of the ending of the first cohort of civic science fellows,
Mhm.
and then there was and I got to meet through SciCommers, which is a free network that we offer at Boston University for early career researchers mainly who would like to improve their skills in the public engagement of science. And so through that, I came to be connected with the Rita Allen Foundation and the CEO, Elizabeth Christopherson. And through that, I became part of this advisory committee that Fanuel and I are talking about. And in our discussions, we talked about what are some of the barriers. What are some of the barriers to fostering a culture of civic science? What are some of the barriers for researchers who might be able to embrace at least some of the roles, and sort of admitting and fully appreciating that researchers have a big plates already that they're spinning in the air while they're trying to get their lab work done and all of that. And one of the things that came out of those discussions was that academia itself didn't have any offerings that had those words and exactly putting it all together. Plenty of wonderful science communication offerings, whether it's science journalism or increasingly strategic science communication. Plenty of those. They're offered by institutions. They're offered by places like Compass. They're all over the place. And Fanuel's wonderful map describes them in great detail. But there wasn't one that was called civic science. And why, as a dean, did I think that was important? Well, partly because I know when I'm doing promotion cases and tenure cases that things that have academic credit to them count more than some workshop that you took for 5 days. So on that basis, I proposed to the foundation this idea of creating, as a beginning, a master's certificate, which we wanted to make available online. I see you put the link in there. Thank you, Fanuel, to make it easy for people to take it, and that these would be Boston University master's credits. So if you were already a student here and you wanted a cognate, you could do that, but you could also take it from outside the university and they would count as master's credits, which was different, I thought, than some of the other programs. And the Rita Allen Foundation thought that was well worth piloting. And so now we're beginning that adventure. And the first two courses in the 4-course sequence are going to be offered this spring. Why aren't we offering all 4 at once? Well, this is new for us. This is our first certificate. We have lots of master's programs. This is our first certificate program. It is also, as a college, our first online certificate program. And we wanted to give us the time and space to make something happen, and then maybe if there's anything that needs tuning up before we offer the next couple of courses, to do that as anyone would, because naturally our big goal is to make sure the students are well cared for. So thanks for the question. I hope I'm not talking too long, Fanuel, but that's
No, this
why I thought to do it, because it
no,
wasn't.
no, this is good. This is part of the, and I get this question a lot when I'm talking to leaders of programs where they're asking, how do such things begin, right? And what are those earliest conversations that are taking place? What are they seeing locally, right? And the common question is like, okay, what's the advice, especially when trying to launch something like this, right? So this is not operational yet, right? You're going to start in the spring, right?
Starting in the spring, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's based on the 5 pillars of learning that were set up with the advisory committee for the Civic Science Fellows. So trying very hard to align with best practices such as we have them, in this very early stages of creating, academic programs or other kinds of programs to support this newish area.
Yeah. So how does it fit with other initiatives? Because these courses, you have to create these courses from scratch, right? You have contextual storytelling, leadership and advocacy, your learning outcomes. I mean, engaging audiences, data and information presentation. These are new courses, right? That you
They are
designed
new
for
courses.
the
Yeah.
certificate.
Yeah, so I applied for a grant, and that's how I was talking, why I was talking with the foundation too, right? I applied for a grant because I thought I'm doing something brand new. It's hard to prove to senior leadership here, because it is new, that it's going to be the enrollments will be sustainable and so on. And you can take some of the sting out of it with grant funding, right? And I thought funders often really like to provide seed funding over a finite window of time, and then they want to see something that might be sustainable. And I thought, well, this should fill the bill there. It is something that seed funding will definitely help it get off the ground. And that, if I've done it right, and if the market is what we think it is, and the need is what we think it is, then the enrollments should make it sustainable. And we've also, thought carefully about keeping costs down in creating it. And so the tuition costs are lower, although they're still higher than, in an ideal world, I would like them to be, but they are lower than the residential programs that we have at Boston University. So yeah, so all that was in my mind. I also thought, and I hope to do this, that there were two other opportunities building on this foundation. And again, using the seed support from the Rita Allen Foundation, which I'm still really grateful that they would give it a go, even though nobody had done it before and we hadn't done it before. Is there the broader opportunity? I think there is a broader opportunity for a health and science master's degree program at Boston University. BU has had either science, journalism or science communication since the 1970s. Actually, currently, we're not offering that because in the middle of the pandemic, the faculty who were teaching what was then the science journalism program had to retire. And so we had to put the program on a hiatus. And I thought, what a great opportunity. I'm sorry about the reason, but a great opportunity to think about what should it look like in the future.
Yeah.
And I thought, as a science journalist myself, that only focusing on science journalism was a little limited. But if I look at science communication more broadly and integrating civic science into that, then I feel like I'm setting students up for better success in the future. So my hope is we get these courses started, we continue to explore an expanded master's program, and I'm being really candid about that here. We'll see what happens. I mean, this is not something that's gone through our processes yet, but it is my ambition. I don't mind talking about my ambition. And I also think that given that the courses are online, maybe there are some little pieces we can take out as samples that we might be able to offer for free to the community as well as the paid versions. So, but first
Right.
we got to get the first things first done, the foundation set, and then you can explore these other potentials.
Yeah. And earlier, I think the name you're looking for was Neil Lane.
Neil Lane, that's it. Thank you so much. And can I tell you something embarrassing? I've actually sat with Neil Lane and testified before the Senate about the value of investing in basic science research. That is how embarrassing that is. So,
And with that, he talked about civic scientists, right? That concept
yeah,
in his
yeah,
paper. So the audience then for this certificate, online it says the professionals, right? Science communicators, but also scientists. Tell us
yeah,
more about your reasoning around who the target audience is for this certificate.
yeah. Yeah, so I think this college is quite used to professionals and, communicators. We have less often served scientists who want to build their skills in engagement. And I really think that for civic science to work, it's going to have to, those skills are going to have to be in multiple places.
Mhm.
And in my fantasy land, every lab would have a civic scientist in it. Every lab who's trying to do something for public some research that will ultimately serve the public directly in some way, because I think that would help them really succeed better, right? And maybe that's crazy on my part, but in my defense, I would point out that there have been other kinds of jobs added for other reasons in the past. For instance, there are paralegals, right? They're part of an office, but they're not quite the attorney, but they have a different role. There are patient advocates in the healthcare system. There are lots of roles we could, if we all brainstorm together, we would think of that didn't exist maybe 20, 30 years ago, but now exist because there's a need. And so what I'm hoping for is that the early career scientists or others who are in the science world who would like to add these engagement skills would find these courses useful.
Yeah, yeah. And what would be the key metric of success for the the outcomes, right? For these students that go through this, what do you hope that they'll be able to do, right, that they can't do before?
Yeah, let me take that shorter term and longer term. So
Yeah.
shorter term, they would have strategic skills like understanding how to listen with humility, genuinely engaging with people's concerns, knowing some of the techniques of building community and connection, building trust, all of that in the shorter term, and how we would measure that by learning outcomes, right? We would also measure that by enrollments number, if we're right and the need is there and the way we're providing it is a useful one, then I hope we would see enrollments that demonstrate that it's being taken up and used. And then longer term, you know, could we see people with titles like civic scientist? I don't know, but that would be nice, and I would consider that the ultimate success.
Yeah, and also I'm curious from the STEM departments at BU, do you envision even seeing a flow that direction, right? It could be a
Yes,
mentor.
I do. I would love, and in fact, it's been interesting as we started to talk with colleagues here about our plans, asking them what do you think, in true civic science style, trying to co-create with them. We've gotten a lot of interest in the courses, in the ideas behind it. And I would love to see, and again, this is the communication dean's fantasy land, but I would love to see civic science training in every researcher's training somewhere. Even if that's not your goal in life. I'm not saying everybody should do this as a full-time job, but you should understand how to engage and how to do so in a collaborative, bidirectional way beyond your research horizon, even if that's not what you do every day. You should have a little sense of it. And I'm not suggesting, not ever, that researchers all suddenly have to gain 100% of other kinds of skills that they don't have. I'm just saying it should be part of their toolkit, the way lots of other things are part of their toolkit, the way understanding p-values are important, or any number of other things that researchers need to learn. And in response to the thing that says, well, there's no time and space and room, yes, there is. We just have to figure it out, right? And are you going to get as in-depth knowledge? Of course you won't, as somebody whose full major is that. And then those trade-offs are something, I think we in academia have done lots and lots over hundreds of years, right? So we should be able to figure it out.
Yeah, I think you're also leading to this direction of travel, right? So I'm curious from your role in the standing committee,
Mm.
you just take us there at that level now, right? So zoom out from BU and just connect the dots for us. So what do you all from the committee side, what have you been hearing
Yeah.
with respect to training this space at different campuses?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. So look, just to explain for those who may not know, this is Fanuel's referring to the National Academies Standing Committee on Advancing Science Communication. I'm also, by the way, on the committee called Climate Crossroads for the National Academies. And in fact, Climate Crossroads started as their climate communication initiative in 2018 and ballooned into what acts almost like a university center within the academies. And the standing committee was started some years ago. I just joined it this past year, and we're looking to support the ongoing improvement of people's understanding, appreciation, use of scientific findings overall through a bunch of means. One is how do we focus on community engagement? That is certainly a part of our, and originally, by the way, when the standing committee was set up, it was around science communication, and now engagement is as a bidirectional activity is part of that umbrella of thinking there. And we're also looking at how do we what kinds of trainings might be needed, what kind of supports and structures systematically should exist in institutions, whether they're academic or otherwise. And of course, last and not least, there is the research into the science of science communication, how to improve it, what to do about misinformation, generative in a world where generative AI is making things sort of supercharged. What do we do about that? So we look on all of those fronts.
Yeah, because it's very dynamic. Things are changing a lot, right? Scholarship side and also on the practice side. I think
So
that's what makes it interesting. And I actually appreciate the committee's help, right, with our working group. So Mariette was also in a
yeah,
working group that was sponsored through Research America,
that's right.
where we were talking about how do we integrate, right? And you've been thank you for your insights into how do we think about this integrating civic science, public engagement training into graduate. I wonder if, do you want to say a few words about that, or
Thank you. You know, I really appreciate you reminding me of these things. You can see how jet lagged I am. I'm not remembering anything. So yeah, Fanuel was talking about Research America and a convening that they had around what kind of trainings might be needed. And we were asked by this group, we on the standing committee, there is a subcommittee around what kind of skills are, are needed. That's a formal name, but it's escaping me. I'm so embarrassed at the moment. And we were asked to share our thoughts on what are some of the things that are not offered, but that are needed. And here I also want to make a recommendation to folks here who may or may not have seen it, but I find John Beasley's and Anthony Dudo's book on strategic science communication really helpful. And some of the ideas that we recommended to for the Research American convening are echoed there. And things like what we were just talking about, being actually prepared to do strategic engagement in the first place, like ability to listen and develop trust, being empathetic, and the sort of very human things that are essential to build a community.
yeah, and I think goal setting, part of that book, the goal setting
Goal
is
setting.
actually a key skill set that needs to be learned. And I will add that. So Bruce Lewinstein, I believe he's on the committee,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Wrote a wonderful paper trying to, again, articulate what these skill sets are, and I think that's a wonderful read that people can build on, right? That was the idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of research in this space, and maybe later I can share to Fanuel a few links that we've been circulating around that are interesting. Yeah, so yeah, Bruce is an old a hero.
And that's part of this, right? Connecting dots, right, between practice, research, even here within the New England area. Now, we've been talking a lot, and I want to shut up now and actually just hear from the community to ask questions and of Mariette. So the floor is open, and I will try and moderate. So if you want to, I think you just raise your hand, and I'll just call on you. I see James already at it. James, go for it. Let's see. He just dropped off actually also at the
Oh,
same time. Okay.
yeah. And maybe while we're waiting, I just want to say one thing about setting goals. And I think everybody here would know this, to Fanuel's point, that they should be strategic goals. And it isn't a strategic goal to hope that people will just appreciate your work and support it with taxpayer dollars. Like that's not a strategic goal. And I have many times when I've worked with somebody, their goal is fuzzy as that.
Yeah, I think it will keep coming up. So Dan, go for it.
Actually, I had a question, but I also that inspired a question. But so I'll ask two if that's okay.
Yeah.
So hi, I'm Dan. For those who don't know me, I run the Scientific Citizenship Initiative. We were started at Harvard. We recently became an independent nonprofit. We created a lot of civic science training programs for STEM graduate students, and now we have a new mission, which is to support a growing civic science movement. So when you said it is a movement, I am very on board with you, and I think that there is. And you mentioned analyzing the sort of market need for the certificate program. And this is a topic I'm really interested in because we believe there's a growing movement from all the people we work with, but we haven't done sort of the market research. And so I was wondering like how you did that, or if you can say more about what that research looks like. I think having data points, if you're willing to share any, would be helpful for those of us trying to make the case that there is a growing movement. And then, yeah, second question, what would you recommend for strategic objectives to elaborate a little bit more on what you were just saying? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, I just want to say thank you for the Scientific Citizenship Initiative. It's amazing. I'm so pleased that you are now a nonprofit and moving forward, and look forward to getting an opportunity to continue collaborating with you. And I think that's really awesome. How do we do it? As you rightly point out, hard data isn't really there because when something doesn't exist yet, it's hard to find the data. So what we did was, we have a, gosh, what's the name of it? We have a platform that I could tell Fanuel about later. It's not it's not something that other people wouldn't have access to. It used to be called, what did it used to be called? I think the name of it is Lightcast, if I remember right. And it has information about jobs growth in various fields. And this may be cheating, but I looked at trends around communication like roles with every kind of related title I could think of, and then use that as part of our case for giving this a chance. It also really helped that I already had grant funding, so it wasn't really a cost on Boston University. So I did, I thought that would be helpful to the institution to give us a chance to go ahead. Everybody can agree that there's a need for more science engagement, but it is certainly harder to put the fine point on the numbers. I can point to related kinds of growth too that were useful. Job growth in health communication specifically, job growth in climate communication roles specifically. So I looked at industries that had need to do community engagement and looked at those as signals in the noise as well. And those are some of the things that we did. I hope that makes sense. It's not 100%, like it's hard to 100% do that when the jobs are not totally there yet. So you're looking for signals that there's movement.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder, I imagine this is kind of proprietary information for you, but like if any of that could be published, I think it'd be really helpful for the community, right? For all the people working in this space to show that there is demand for this and there is at least some data, even though it's at early stages. I don't know if that's something that's possible, but I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. Certainly things like, the labor statistics that are publicly available are. I don't know if the platform we're using, if there's any hindrance there, but I just
Well, I
because I
just
just
mean like if you compiled these yourself and making the case having already looked at them, but yeah,
yeah.
that's not readily accessible. But just a thought.
Yeah, I'll take a look. I mean, I would love to see more people be successful with it. I mean, and another piece of data would be if these courses seem to do well, that would add to evidence too, if there's, if there's implicit demand there. So you
Yeah.
also asked me about strategic objectives in communication. And what I mean there is usually when you want to be, and you guys all probably all know this. So sorry if you probably, Dan, you could probably explain it better than I can. But you'll have a goal for the communication and something you want the people to do once they have that communication, if you've done it successfully. So a goal can be, oh, I don't know, you want a community to understand that vaccines are safe and that it's okay to, to go get one, and here's how you do it. And a measure of success would be greater incidence of people getting their vaccines in a timely way. So that's what I mean. Instead of, I want you to, because usually it comes from deficit model thinking. If everybody knows that term, deficit model is if only I explain it to you, then you will fully appreciate and you'll share my viewpoint, right? Which is not something we can ever take to the bank ever. So I think if we hope, as I've actually heard from I can't say it because it'll say who it is, but from a group of distinguished researchers in a particular area, that they wanted to just get their stories out there, and if only their stories would be out there, then the taxpayers would finally understand that science is awesome and research is awesome and engineering is awesome, and they would vote for more funding. That's just, it's not like that. And I mean, that's just, we know that's not like that. The other thing to really appreciate and is part of setting that strategy is who exactly are you talking to? There's on any issue, there's a spectrum people who, was it Yale who did the Six Americas? But there have been lots of studies before and since then. There are going to be people you can reach on one side and people you can't reach on the other side, and a whole, variety in the middle. You should pick specific groups that you can reach with a specific thing you want them to know and the specific action you would like them to take, or actions. But yeah, those in that way you'll be more likely to be successful.
And it feels like you probably did this in building the program, the certificate. You were that intentional as well.
I hope you all agree. But
Other questions?
thanks for the great questions, Dan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Brooke.
Yeah, hi, Mariette. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. How do I lower my hand? There we go. I have a question about, I guess, scope and scope creep. So one of the challenges that, I run into both as a researcher and an administrator is knowing like what science communication is and what it isn't. And it, especially in a climate where it feels like everything related to science, health, technology, medicine, everything is like urgent and breaking. But what gets included in the buckets and what gets excluded, or is that just not even the right way to think about what we're doing?
Well, I guess first of all, thank you so much, Brooke. You're making me thoughtful, which is always pleasant on a Thursday afternoon. I guess I for a while now I've embraced the idea that science communication includes engagement. We do it on social platforms, we all the time. I mentioned my little anecdote of once upon a time, I would write an article and people would maybe send me a letter, but well before I stepped down as editor-in-chief at Scientific American, I was having ongoing conversations with people who are consuming that content and trying to decide how to use that content. And the extent of my strategy at the time was that I was providing journalism, which is for other people to then use in the ways they see fit. So I think we can't escape from engagement, and the question is, how do you want to use it? Do you want to use it because you're just providing information that's interesting for people to consume, and do whatever they want? Or are you providing it because you have something you're trying to achieve together, in a collaborative way? And I think maybe that's one of the dividing lines, maybe of buckets. Maybe some of us are being strategic communicators because that's what we're trying to do. And some of us are just sharing information for the joy of the sharing and the joy potentially of the receiving, and that what you want to do. But I do think no matter what the program is, you can't escape social platforms now, so you probably can't escape the engagement piece of science communication.
Yeah, and I think that question as well builds on,
Yeah.
a question of boundaries, right? Where the scope creep, it goes back to my earlier question about civic science, because then in civic science that it expands even more, right, Brooke? And I think for those people who are outside, they're like, okay, so what is this then, right? It feels amorphous. And I think that's a challenge I run into a lot when people are trying to say, okay, tell me more about this. What does it mean? And am I part of it? How can I be part of it, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, one way I try to sort that out for myself. I mean, the world's a complex place, right? But as a dean, I think about the portfolio. So I think about, for instance, at the college level, the portfolio of talent. I've got people in journalism, I've got people in film and television, I've got people in mass communication, advertising, and public relations, and they're all doing something around the bigger umbrella of communication. And some of it is strategic, my public relations people, my advertising people. Some of it is, a little more informational, like the journalism, and some of it is entertainment. Sometimes, the documentary filmmakers, but also the ones that do creative works that are works of their own imagination. So, yeah, I think it's hard sometimes. And the trick is probably thinking about what you're trying to do in that instant for that moment, rather than trying to solve it all at the same time. Maybe. I don't know, Brooke, do you think that's fair?
I think that's right. It's just, it's tempting when, whatever, right? AI is the hot topic right now. It's tempting to say like, oh, it's also that, right? So when you're trying to make the case for the importance of something, it's tempting to chase after whatever everyone's excited about. And at the same time, it makes it so it's sort of everything and nothing all at once, as Fanuel said, right?
And
Yeah.
it comes in handy when you're trying to pitch ideas to like funders, right? Being clear about that as well, because some funders may have a vision of what it is in this way, and then you're coming in from another way. I think it creates an interesting dynamic, right? So to your point, Mariette, just being clear about just defining it for yourself, what that is, right? Sky is here. I see a hand up.
Hi, yes, my name is Sky Murray. Let's see if I can lower my hand also. I'm a PhD student at Northeastern in the new interdisciplinary design and media program, and I'm focusing on climate communication. And I also used to run a graduate program in collaborative design, so I'm very
Nice.
excited about what you've been talking about. But I'm curious, I guess I have a couple questions, but the main one is how, like, so much of what's not working, we have great movements happening, but why, we've had challenges and have had a difficulty adapting is that we're kind of stuck in these systems of, of just not being maybe self-reflective, and how kind of design was set up, for example, is this, it can solve any problem, and kind of there's this heuristic model rather than a kind of adapting and being like reflective about what we can do as creatives and as communicators. And I'm just curious, like, is there like kind of, I guess, a communication historical element to all of the kind of some of these courses, or in the future, in terms of like, kind of here's how we got stuck in these cycles in the past, focused on, kind of tending to be more like domain expert, jargon focused, bulk science communication. How do we, I don't know, kind of like a meta analysis of like I don't know, I think about graduate students as like learning how to think rather than just learning new skills. And I'm wondering, how do you change that? Is that reflective capacity a part of this? Sorry, it's a very meta question.
It's a meta question. And we do have some, so one of the pillars is science and context. Like, how does when I say pillars, the 5 pillars of civic science as set up by the Practice and Science of Civic Science Advisory Committee. And so we do try to incorporate some of that thinking, but Sky, I don't think we would do justice to it in the lovely way that you've just articulated. Yeah, because I mean, this is not the first time the world has seen propaganda, let's say, or this is not the first time, people have tried to harness communication or not harness it to various ends. And one thing I really appreciate about what you just said is the opportunity to be self-reflective and to try to take advantage of that when it happens. The panel that was in Berlin last week that Fanuel mentioned, which was around fostering the next generation of leaders in civic science. One of the current civic science fellows, her name is Abrielle Epps. When I asked her what should people do, after this, panel, what are something they should think about? She said, well, we should think, one thing we should do is think about the pace of science publication now. Like, we should reflect on if we need to make time to do other work, is however many papers we're demanding, is that the right thing? So I think the historic lens would be a really beneficial one to helping us think toward future steps. And I don't think we're probably addressing it at the level that you're suggesting, but I think it would be a great idea to do that.
Yeah, but what gives me inspiration is I'm just thinking about our advisory meetings, Mariette.
Yeah.
This question, Sky, has come up before, right? In terms of thinking about systems and structures, and Brooke, you talk about boundaries, right? And Mariette, you may remember, right? Power existing at boundaries. Someone mentioned that, and I forgot who it was, but so that was just very
Yes.
but this being intentional, Sky, right? I think that's what you're talking about. How do we
Yes.
be intentional at this moment in time so that we can avoid these like circles, running around in circles, jumping at the first thing that comes up shiny and doing something, right? Without thinking intentionally about how do we involve the community, right? Whether designing new courses, locally engaging with community. So there's so much there that is taking place. Enough for me. Again, other questions?
I just want to say I love that word intentionality. I think a lot of civic science is about being more intentional in every direction.
Yeah, yeah. I shared in the chat the pillars that
Thank
Marietta
you.
was
Yeah.
mentioning.
Thanks.
Mary Elena, go for it.
Hi, again, I apologize for my voice, but yeah, no, I'm inspired by everything you said because it really gives a full kind of all around holistic understanding of what we mean by communication and engagement. Part of the challenge that I found is not only the different definitions, but people not understanding those two concepts or disciplines at all, right? So thinking that, you know, everybody writes papers, everybody goes to conferences, so everybody does communication, right? Or just not understanding at all the concept of community engagement and why it's needed in science at all, right? So we've struggled a little bit with the semantics of it, right? If it's communication, some people feel that's not what they do. If it's engagement, what does that mean? Civic science, we once heard nobody knows what that is, you know. So so I don't know. I guess my question is, did you ever encounter something like that, like people struggling to understand what you were trying to do? And how did you get, you know, what is your advice in a very STEM focused university like Northeastern, that things like communication and, you know, and art maybe, or things like that are considered ancillary and not part of the main work that is STEM. So that's why I'm in love with your idea of a civic scientist in every lab, because it's true. There were things, now we need evaluation and monitoring. Now we need ethicists, things that at one point didn't exist and now they exist. So that's my question. Thank you. And thank you. I really enjoyed listening to you.
Thank you so much. I love getting a chance to hear from you. Sorry about the voice, but you sound good to me. I've tried explaining it lots of different ways. So, but one of the things I found myself doing, so I was talking with the former president at Boston University, Bob Brown. He stepped down a couple of years ago now. And well, first of all, he was talking to me about if only he explained things better, people would understand and really value science. So I was trying to get him past that. But I said to him, look, let me put it this way to you. I know we're all really proud, Boston University, like Northeastern, another, very research focused university, which is great, by the way. I love research. It's awesome. It's how we get anything done in the world. And I said, and it would be amazing if, for instance, we came up with a cure for cancer, right? That would be amazing. Or, not that there's only one cancer, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But if nobody ever heard about it, or worse, if they didn't believe you because they didn't trust what they heard, then where would you be? So to me, this is a very powerful reason for why we should all be not just embracing the skills of engagement and communication, but just like swearing by them. I mean, how do we think science is going to be ultimately successful if it isn't able to engage the people that it serves? And I think, yeah, like I said, there's a lot of room for everybody. There are some people who maybe they don't, maybe they're not the person you put in front of the community because they're good at this thing or that thing. And we're all good at different things, and that's okay. Think about the portfolio and what are all the ingredients we need in each kind of team effort.
Yeah, because one of the things you mentioned that I loved too was the having strategic goals, strategic communication goals. I also come from a stratcom background, and there's a bit even within communication and then from outside communication, those jobs associated with strategic communication are kind of devalued, right? That they're only about commercials or, or selling or something like that. And so, yeah, I think it's helping everyone understand everything that we mean by communication and engagement and how hard community engagement really is, that it's not just social media, it's part of it, right? But yeah, okay. So the struggle continues.
Yeah. It takes time.
Yeah.
I often tell a story. I did this at the panel in Berlin, I think last week, or no, I did it in a different interview of a guy named Kevin Esfelt, who's at MIT Media Lab, and I met him in, I want to say 2016. And he was talking to me about the island of Nantucket and the kind of catastrophic levels of Lyme disease that they have there. And he said, I've got this, now with CRISPR-Cas9 and gene editing and gene drives, we've got these tremendous tools, but they are so powerful. I shouldn't, as the scientist, be the person to decide how and whether they're used. So we have approached, and he was mentioning his research team, we've approached the community in Nantucket and told them we have this idea, but we're not going to make a move unless you want it. And they started a conversation with community members on the island. I think it was only last year or the year before they finally decided they would test this idea of gene edited mice to break the cycle of transmission. So you can see that was a lot of years. So it takes time, but once you build those relationships, then things run more smoothly, right? So we haven't started the journey part yet, or we've just started the journey. And I think, if we're stubborn, Rialena, if we kind of keep up, as you say, the good fight, who knows, in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, things might look different. And I hope they do.
Yeah. So on that note, actually, Mariette, let's talk about your future, the vision that you have. I shared in the chat there, this PCAST letter, is a letter that came out from the White House not long ago. And it speaks to this inclusion of public engagement in the federal agencies, right? Increasing collaboration with communities. Now, who knows what will happen with that, with changes that are happening right now. But Mariette, from your perch, and given the direction of travel that we're on right now, where do you see us all going, right? Maybe you can pick at least the training landscape, feel free to pick that one, or something else within civic science as we go along this journey.
Well, I just want to say first broadly, in an increasingly polarized world, right, where our social platforms are creating these thought bubbles, echo chambers, and it's kind of hard to escape them. I don't see a better way out than to fully embrace the tools of civic science. We can call it whatever we want to call it, and I don't feel those two words are precious necessarily. But genuinely connecting with people, genuinely taking in their feedback, genuinely trying to find paths together, I think is going to be important for us. So yeah, in the training landscape, I'm hoping that we see more offerings, both, at the credit level, but also not at the credit level, opportunities and networks like yours, Fanuel, here, with PESH, and also with things like scicommers or other types. I mean, it's going to take all of us. It took all of us to get to where we are now. It's going to take all of us to change it from here forward. So, and looking forward, I am coming in as the co-chair of the Standing Committee for Advancing Science Communication. That's actually just begun with Raj Panja. And looking forward, we're talking about what kind of programming can we create to help build bridges for people along the lines that we're all discussing around the virtual table here. And that's what you'll hear more about it early next year about our programming. We're going to be looking for a variety of kinds of things, from virtual discussions like this one to, potentially symposia, to other activities like Fanuel mentioned the one we did with Research America, where our subcommittee provided some insights. We hope to be really useful to all of you and others who are trying to improve science communication and engagement in the world.
Yeah, to bringing down the silos, right?
So let's bring down the silos. That's another thing I say about civic science. This is scientists who leave the ivory tower.
Yeah.
Not that they're ever towers, but
Mariette, thank you so much for those insights. We'll wrap this up here and look forward to having more discussion with others from the BU community as well, because we all.
I'm just putting my email in here. I know you guys can find me, but if I can ever be helpful to you, connect you, or or you just want to chat sometime, that would be awesome. Thanks for having me.